Shalom, family, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's weekly news update. And as always, we're grateful for everyone joining us. Let's see, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Rumble. And we're always thankful for those on Rumble. That's our backup if we ever get ourselves in too much trouble on some of these other platforms. Because let's face it, folks, sometimes we have to cover some things that may not be their favorite topic. Let's just say it that way, right? I don't think we've got anything that's going to be near that today, but there are times, so we have to keep that rumble going. So thank you to every one of you that shared the link and that are part of this continuing growing group that are paying attention to the things going on without being overwhelmed. That's one of the things that we like to focus on here, folks, is to be informed without being overwhelmed. That's a big theme, and it's important because if you are too connected and you're getting updates every 30 seconds or every minute or every few minutes, not only is that disturbing your rhythm, if you will, throughout the day, but it's adding anxiety. It's adding all kinds of things to your life. Thank you for the 5x5, brother. And these are things that are not healthy for you. And so if you get too involved, if you will, it can be very disturbing and you can lose focus on the things that you should be spending your energy on. After all, you're here for a reason. You have a purpose. And we're grateful for every single one of you because there are no extra parts. In case you hadn't noticed, we we need every piece of the body functioning and operating completely and awake and sober in this hour. And so what we like to do is do these weekly updates. And for those of you that are joining us maybe for the first time, we do have a website that we put all of these headlines on, and we've said this, we say this every broadcast, but I just like to continue to share that because it is a very powerful resource, allows us to keep track of things that we've looked at previously in the year. And sometimes we go, hey, didn't we cover this before? And we can go back and find some of those stories. And so it really provides us a good reference, and the feedback has been very good. So share that with your friends, those that are watching, those that are believers and are watching the news from a biblical perspective. Well, this will be helpful because we kind of try to weed out, and of course, you know, we do the best we can, but we really don't like to cover things that are just fluff or time consumers. A lot of politics is time consumption. A lot of the media coverage, if you will, and sensational stories are really generally used as distractions for the vast majority of the let's face it, not quite aware people, and intentionally to cover some of the more significant stories. So we like to kind of take a look and see what's going on behind the scenes that they're trying to distract you from, right? And so we've been watching a number of different things and several lead stories tonight. Very, very ominous signs going on around the earth. So we're going to get into some of these stories tonight, giving people a chance to get on in. And it's so good to see you all. So thankful for everyone that is here with us on the chat. We've got a pretty good group here growing on Facebook and as well on YouTube. So thank you all for sharing the links and getting our brethren together. And it's important that we do that because we need to kind of be on the same sheet of music in terms of where we are, what's going on. Maybe, you know, we might have different viewpoints on different passages of scripture or different fulfillments. That's all right. But at least being aware together of where you're at, what's going on in your region of the world, how it pertains to Bible prophecy, how you can be better prepared. These are all good things. And maybe you feel like, hey, I'm pretty good, I've got it set. Well, what about your brothers? What about your sisters? That's why I encourage you to share the link, share to encourage them, to strengthen them so they don't feel alone. Because the more of you they see, the more comfort they feel that, hey, Elohim has his people on the earth and they don't have their head in the sand. They understand what's going on. And it makes people feel better when they know that you're out there, brethren, that you're there. I look on the chat and I see all these wonderful folks, many of which I know personally, and I know their walk, and I know that they love the King. And you're wonderful people to meet. You're wonderful people to be connected with, and they're going to feed off of the things that you're learning. So connect them. And I know that sometimes it's going to be difficult because they're going to go through stages of grief. And as they learn things that don't fit the narrative, well, it's gonna cause some issues. But be there to comfort them, and remember your own process as you came into truth about different things, how it shocked your world, how it broke your paradigms, and you needed people to be there that understood that process and could encourage you through it, so that you didn't run away from things you needed to face. And that is the real friends. Those are the kind of friends you need. And on that note, let's get to the news. All right. And tonight's top story is, again, one of those chilling stories about China. And we've watched this. If you guys remember, we covered a story last week about Russia and China on the brink of a military alliance that could overwhelm the United States. If you guys remember that, that was a week ago. And this story, again, it was a foretelling of what we're starting to see and what is starting to now become quite obvious for everyone to see in the world. For decades, the U.S. has been the main military superpower, but the U.S. faces a formidable new threat and a rising potential for global conflict. And so our top story is that China is now urging regional alert as the U.S. military is stepping up its forward deployment in the region. In China's defense ministry on Thursday urged the Asian Pacific to be on high alert as the United States steps up forward military deployment in the region after reports of a U.S. plan to revive a Pacific airfield that launched atomic bombs or bombing of Japan. And so we're seeing a bit of a set of the players on the field, if you will. And folks, that there are those who benefit if there's conflict. There are those who make lots of benefits when there's conflict. And so this is one of the things that we knew from the scripture, from the warnings of Messiah, that we would see wars and rumors of wars. And this is nothing new. So I'm not pretending that it is. The difference is the scale and the formidable enemies that may be engaged in conflict and the weapons that they can bring to bear. And if you bear in mind the, sort of things concerning the reduction of numbers of people and the intention to accomplish that, one might surmise that this is a almost coordinated thing with an intention. That's why we watch it. Okay. And there are prophecies in the book of Revelation about war, or about peace being taken from the earth and mass loss of life. And so this is why we don't have a choice, folks. We are commanded to watch, and that's what we're going to do. And so Russia is also threatening. This is formidable. Take a look at this, guys. Russia is threatening to take U.S. military bases in NATO territory as a chilling warning is issued. That's brazen. They're feeling a little bit of strength. A prominent Russian broadcaster said American occupation troops should be withdrawn from Europe during a furious rant on live state television. A top Kremlin propagandist called on the U.S. to hand over its European military bases to Russia. Whoo! Well, at least they're telling you how they feel. At least they're letting you know what they think anyway. Whether or not that's going to happen, we don't know. I doubt it'll happen without a fight. And so here we are. This is why we're paying attention to these things, because the rhetoric precedes the conflict. Always does. So we pay attention to the rhetoric. We try to read between the lines and see if perhaps, we have to start making some other choices. I mean, let's face it, folks. If these big boys go to war then there's going to be casualties everywhere, and our assignment's going to change. Our priorities are going to change. Everything changes. Think about being in Gaza right now. Priorities changed overnight, and there's a whole new set of rules going on now. Okay, and where they over 20,000 people are dead as a result of that conflict already. We'll get there. But staying on Russia for a minute, they launched the biggest aerial barrage on Ukraine. So they're stepping up. Now, this is what we're watching. Why are we watching that? Because we're hearing greater rhetoric. We're hearing greater direct statements. And we're seeing more aggressive kinetic action, as in launching the biggest aerial barrage of the war against Ukraine. So put all those together and get to the 10,000 foot view. What are they tipping their hand to? They're getting a little fed up. They're getting a little upset with having to deal with this ongoing conflict, and they want to bring it to a conclusion. And they're prepared to take on whoever they have to take on to get it done. And so that's serious stuff, folks. Russia launched 122 missiles and dozens of drones against Ukrainian targets, officials said on Friday, killing at least 30 civilians across the country on what Air Force officials called the biggest aerial barrage of the war. I don't even know what just happened there. Okay. At least 144 people were wounded, and an unknown number were buried under rubble during the roughly 18-hour onslaught. And Ukrainian officials said a maternity hospital, apartment blocks, and schools were among the buildings reportedly damaged across Ukraine. And this, the other part of it, is there's a propaganda war going back and forth. So some of the reports, the missile hits may be real. Where they hit, you need independent verification to some of those things, because of the fact that there's so many rumors. Like I just heard a rumor today that, Oprah was arrested. I can't verify it, but it's out there and people are talking about it. So there's a lot of stuff like that is put out sort of in the rumor mill, and then you don't know if it's real and if it's just being dropped because it's true and they're sort of tipping the hand, or is it something that's about to happen and they're kind of prepping. There's a lot of different things going on psychologically here, which we still have to ferret through. Poland is saying that Russian missiles passed through its airspace. Poland is coming increasingly under the control of Germany, which of course is against Russian forces. And a Russian missile passed through Polish airspace on Friday, entering in and then back into Ukraine, the Polish army said, as Russia pummeled Ukraine with the big air attack. So now they're saying some of that went through Polish airspace, which if they want to use it as a provocation, if they want to use it as a pretext for escalation, they can now, right? So now they got their excuse. They got a fuse lit. And we're watching this. And again, we have to remember that there are those that want conflict. They've got underground places to go hide. They are, they think they can survive it and leave the people on the surface to perish. Folks, this isn't even hidden. This is a open plan. And so, we've all been getting tip-offs since Jesse Ventura, Conspiracy Theory. Remember that show? And I mean, we've been getting tip-offs from back then and even before that. Seem to recall some Prophecy Club speakers warning about some of these things. So these things shouldn't be news to us. But the reality is they're now manifesting at a breakneck speed. And that's what we're taking note of, is it looks like what was prepped for is now being activated. So we watch, we see if the prophecies are true, right? And so far, we're seeing that everything that we were told we were going to see, we're seeing. And that's where we are. There are some, of course, casualties on the other side. Of course, it's not a one-sided war, folks. And that's the nasty thing about war, is there are no winners. There's death on both sides. And again, for people that worship death and think that's a great idea, well, they don't really care who wins the war because they got what they wanted, a bunch of dead bodies. This is the sick reality of the history of man. And here we go again. Russia says 14 dead after indiscriminate Ukrainian attack on Belgorod. And Russia said 14 people, including 2 children, have been killed and 108 injured in indiscriminate Ukrainian strikes, allegedly including cluster bombs on the Russian provincial capital of Belgorod on Saturday, and vowed to retaliate. The Belgorod region, which adjoins northern Ukraine, has, like other Russian border zones, suffered shelling and drone attacks all year that authorities have blamed on Ukraine, although none have previously been on such a scale. So, anybody noticing this? Okay, so we got an increase on one side, and guess what? They got an increase on the other. It's almost like the energy you're sending out is coming back, pressed down, sending out the war vibe brings the war vibe. Like, if you want to go to war, you're going to get warred on. Man still hasn't figured that out, and here we go. Right now, the Netherlands, the Dutch commander in chief, well, they're figuring out what's happening, and they've already concluded that they're going to end up having to go to war. So they're telling their people to prepare. Dutch commander in chief call on Netherlands to prepare for war with Russia. Lieutenant General Martin Wingen, commander-in-chief of the Dutch army, who will resign in 2024. So he's telling you to get ready, and he's leaving. What did I just say? That's actually, that's not funny, but it's like, wow, look at that. Who will resign in 2024, stated that the Netherlands and its society must prepare for war with the Russian Federation. Wingen, in an interview to Telegraph, as reported by LNL Times. The Netherlands should be seriously afraid of war, and our society should prepare for it. So I'm leaving, but you all should get ready for war. I don't even know. I don't even know what to say about that. Speaking of war, Israeli soldiers are definitely feeling the war going on in Israel. It is not a one-sided affair at all. And Israeli soldiers targeted in extremely bloody and intense battles as Gaza Strip tensions rise. This is not going as clean and sharp as previous actions. A lot of people are dying, a lot of death, mass death in the region. Israel's Hamas war, northern Israeli town, city attacked by Hezbollah rockets. So we mentioned that Hezbollah in the north would be getting involved, and sure enough, a northern Israeli town and city was struck with Hezbollah rockets on Wednesday, according to the Times of Israel. And that we're seeing that, of course, they reportedly fired 18 rockets. The terrorist group said they were intended on hit an Israeli naval base. Well, apparently they're not very good at their aim. And this is the other thing, is there's going to be a lot of collateral damage. These are not always high-tech weapons that are being used, and that means it's sloppy. That means there's going to be a lot of peripheral damage, which is what we're seeing. That's exactly the results you would expect to see. All of our veterans out there, any of you veterans, well, when you're dealing with low-level munitions, not only are you going to cause a lot of collateral damage on as you target, but you're even your own folks are going to experience damage because, again, they're low-tech weapons. So this is very messy and disgusting, and a lot of loss of life, which we knew was coming, but it's just still difficult to watch. And I don't care who's on what side. That really gets annoying when you see people trying to promote one side or the other. We're on the side of life, folks, and children dying on either side of any conflict anywhere. We're against that. Period. I don't care what the argument's about. And I don't know any problem that I've ever seen get solved because someone had a bomb. I'm pretty sure we call that, a different thing in a civilized society. Yet somehow we're expected that this is going to somehow result in improvement in the world. So that really is just really disturbing that there are grown-ups who think that way. I really find that hard to sit through. I've watched a lot of this in my adult life, and I think there's some of my brethren out here, especially the veterans, that probably agree with me and say, how many of these do we got to watch, and how many things does it really solve? Nothing. It only creates more problems. And as a matter of fact, I do think there are some grown-ups in the room, and there are some that are speaking up and saying, wait a minute. Now, we understand that a crime was committed, but you don't repay evil with evil, right? South Africa is launching a case in the UN court accusing this country of genocide. So there is a pushback going on. This is not as clean. Again, as I said, this is not going to go in one direction. South Africa has launched this case against the Zionist state at the UN's International Court of Justice, accusing the state of committing genocide in its military campaign in Gaza. And those that are reviewing the evidence of the case are saying that it is a considerable amount of evidence that they're presenting that calls into question some of the actions taken. That doesn't mean that there isn't a right to defend or even attack a provocateur or an enemy, but there's reasons why we have the Geneva Convention. There's reasons why we have international observers in different regions and so forth. It is so that people don't go into that more animalistic mode, if you will. And obviously the hope is to finally end conflict. Remember the prophecy, my brethren, the prophecy that we were given, that we would beat our swords into plowshares. So this feels to me like the world having its full, having had about enough. And it's coming. It's rising. We're all seeing just about enough of all of this. And it's time for a new day. It's time for new solutions, new ways to resolve conflict. Grabbing a bomb or a gun or some other deadly weapon, I've yet to see it improve any society, period. Even the worst of society would agree with you on that. And this is the kind of thing that we're going to continue to see more and more of, I think, as the days of the king approach, because it gets darkest before the dawn. But that doesn't mean we can't speak out against it and say, this is really stupid. Just saying. And I don't care whose side you on, put the guns down and sit down and try and figure out ways to save lives. The end. So how do I feel about that? I guess that's how I feel about that. Blessed are the peacemakers. Amen. Blessed are the peacemakers. We have to make peace. Peace is something you don't get accidentally. Peace is intentional. Peace is something that you have to intentionally want and work toward. And when you don't work toward it, when you use provocative language, when you use statements like blow them off the map, right? When you say things like that, well, then you're going to have conflict because of the words. A soft answer turns away wrath. What is a rash and harsh one? Like blow them off the map. What does that do? Well, that creates conflict. Okay. And now look what's happening. Now the U.S. Navy, this was just yesterday, guys. So the U.S. Navy had to sink 3 Houthi boats attacking merchant ships in the Red Sea. You think this isn't going to escalate now? The U.S. Navy sank 3 small boats, killing the crew, military officials said. Now there's blood in the water. Okay? They finally got their blood in the water. There you go. You got your blood in the water. U.S. Navy helicopters returned fire and sank 3 small boats carrying Houthi militants in the Red Sea on Sunday after U.S. warships responded to a distress call from a merchant vessel, military officials said. A Maersk container ship, a Singapore-flagged Hangzhou, issued a distress call at 6:30 a.m. local time, U.S. Central Command said in a statement on Sunday. The merchant vessel said 4 boats were attacking it. The small boats originated from Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen, fired crew-served and small arms weapons, and basically getting within 20 meters of the vessel and attempting to board the vessel, which has been going on, by the way, in this region for quite a while. And now these are being used as provocations for major war. And again, we were told about these wars. We were told that they were being orchestrated. So we're not shocked as we see certain players being used as tinderboxes to bring this conflict to being, into reality. If you don't think it's religious, you don't understand, because there are people that believe other prophecies and they're trying to make those come to pass. Okay, written by other forces and other spirits. So they're trying to be they're all playing king of the mountain. Who do you think's going to win this? Elohim's going to win. But nevertheless, you got to go through the dark night. And here we got North Korea, and they're getting further and further down their road. Remember that they also partnered with Russia recently. We talked about that about 2 months ago. We saw their diplomatic exchange and offering of small arms, and lo and behold, next thing you know, Kim Jong-un is launching, satellites, right? Well, now he vows to launch 3 more, so he must have got a lot of equipment when he went to visit. He came back with a lot of toys. He's ready to go. He's loaded. Look at him. Look at this guy. He's happy. He's opened up his presents. Look at this guy. He vows to launch 3 more spy satellites and produce more nuclear materials in 2024. And he doesn't look like he's stuttering either. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un vowed to launch 3 additional military spy satellites, produce more nuclear materials, and introduce attack drones in 2024 as he called for overwhelming war readiness to cope with U.S.-led confrontational moves, state media reported on Sunday. So you see what's being done here is a slow ratchet up. The frog's being boiled in the pot, folks. The frog's being boiled in the pot. The question is, do we discern it? Do we know what to do with this information? Some people are in harm's way right now. They're a ticking time bomb where you're sitting. You may have some time, who knows how long, but Elohim will have to move you. If you didn't know about it, you wouldn't even know to pray and ask. Amen. My people perish. Why? Why does his people perish? Why does he say in the book of Hosea that his people perish? For lack of knowledge. Okay, so this is why it's important to stay informed. Don't be overwhelmed, but be aware. That way you're praying and asking and keeping your ears open for instruction. Should you need to get out of a region that may, and this could be anywhere on the earth. You're watching me from all over the earth. It could be anywhere, all right? And so that's why you never know. It could be you. It could be your area. Since talking about some of these disasters beginning a year ago, how many people had to deal with evacuations or various forms of natural disasters, not to mention man-made. So we've got quite a few things on the horizon scripturally that we need to be sober about. And they're continuing to ratchet up this region. Take a look at this. An attack in Syria, which is an ally of Russia. Okay, are you seeing they're poking this bear pretty hard? Attack in Syria kills 11 senior Iranian military officers and injures top advisor into Damascus. So this is an Israeli airstrike. Like, Israel doesn't have enough problems that it needs to go over and start attacking Syria. You see what I'm saying, folks? They already got 2 fronts. They already got the Gaza war going on, and now they got missiles coming in from Hezbollah in the north. And they're attacking, look at this, Damascus airport, and killed nearly a dozen senior Iranian military officials. They really want a war with Iran. They want a full-on shooting war with Iran. And it's been something that they've talked about. We've heard various people, sort of whistleblow that. But they really want it bad, and they're trying to figure out a way. And it's interesting that the other side of this doesn't seem that the effort seems to be restraint, which is an interesting thing to watch. There seems to be a sort of counter move on this other side, and I don't know if you guys are picking it up, but they're trying not to play this game. And I'm wondering if what we think may be certain groups attacking may be them doing attacks to get it going. So I don't know. You got to keep watching. This movie is going to keep getting interesting, okay, as we go along. So, keep paying attention. Shifting to a different gear. And this is another thing that we've been paying attention to all year long. We've been watching these once-in-a-lifetime storms, earthquakes. Remember Turkey And we were like, wow, everybody pulled their ambassadors from Turkey, and then boom, Turkey gets hit with this massive earthquake. Remember that, guys? And now we're seeing major political rumblings going on in Japan, where a lot is suddenly coming to light about corruption and about those that were involved in corruption and government corruption and so forth. And boom, look what happens. I mean, literally a really big boom, too. Look at this. 2 dead in a desperate hunt underway. More earthquake victims buried alive in a rubble in Japan. Is a terrifying video to show people running for cover during a 7.6. Remember, guys, they lowered the scale. When we were young, when we were kids, that would have been like an 8.2 or something or whatever. Would have been much bigger. So they changed the scale to lower these because there's more of them. All right. The scripture told us that we would see this. More earthquakes. At least 2 people are believed dead. Rescuers are scrambling to save more trapped victims of a devastating 7.6. This is an early report. There's definitely more damage that has come in since then that we now know of. Japan's meteorological agency said that the earthquake's magnitude of 7.6 is the largest ever recorded in the Noto Peninsula. So once again, remember China just had that storm just last week, guys. That was just last week's broadcast. Go back 1 week. You'll see China get nailed with a massive once-off flooding event. Here we got this thing going on in Japan. So what's happening here? And this is the war of titans. This is a war we don't understand with weapons that we don't really comprehend. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing once in a lifetime things for a reason. And of course, that's feeding a narrative as well. So, of course, you're going to see them in unprecedented places. And this is what the scripture warned us would happen. He never told us how or why. But he told us that we would see earthquakes in diverse places, and earthquakes reported in South Carolina and Georgia. Now, I remember earlier in the year, we were looking for one in Georgia. We were waiting for one to happen in Georgia. And it finally hit. Look at this. Earthquakes reported in South Carolina and Georgia and Greenville, South Carolina. The United States Geological Survey said 2 earthquakes reported in South Carolina and Georgia on Thursday. So we got shaking going on all over, everywhere. Places that don't normally get earthquakes, guys. That's not South Carolina, not known for earthquakes. Georgia's not known for earthquakes, right? Oh, there was a small one. Oh, look at that. Okay, we got a field reporter reporting in. Reporting in from Illinois. We had a small earthquake there. Okay. That is some crazy stuff, guys. Oh, speaking of that, good call, brother. Glad you brought that up. Take a look at this. Here, let me put this on the screen. So in California, they had some fun. Hey, look at this.
Oh, shit. Oh, no. Oh, God.
Boom. Thanks for bringing that up, David.
Fucking God.
Yeah, Rogue Wave just came in, man. And I mean, they had to run. They were booking it, too. Yeah, and it came in quite a bit, guys. This came in like several blocks. Like this one guy who's filming this is running for quite a while. He's huffing and puffing to get away from the shoreline. So that wave came in pretty good. That was scary. They were thinking, oh no, tsunami, But now tie this with the earthquake, right? Tie this together because they've been talking about this for the last couple of days. So something's going on here. Something happening in the earth, and we're seeing it. We're seeing the effects of it right now that are happening. And so, here, I'll put this back on. Yeah, take a look at this. Let me fast forward to right there. Go. This is right when the wave comes over. And I mean, they get nailed. Look at that. It's a good thing that guy bolted that truck right when he did. He would have, that truck would have been in the middle of the ocean somewhere if he didn't just like go right now. Look at this guy sliding. Yeah. So, and I saw several rogue waves that came in to California. So it wasn't just that one. There were a couple of them that were affecting them. And then, you know, of course, you guys know about. I don't know if you saw footage of the earthquake, but it was quite dramatic. Yeah, it was quite dramatic. I mean, this was Dabu Seven's report. I think he gave us a report on it, but you know, just a lot of damage, a lot of road damage, a lot of structural damage. You know, earthquakes are no joke, man. They not only affect them, you know, they not only knock down structures, but then they render other structures like unlivable. You know, so sometimes they're still standing, but they're no longer structurally sound. So the damage can be way more than you visibly even see. Sometimes you look and you go, okay, they only knocked down 10 buildings. Well, it also rendered 20 others, you know, no longer safe. So it can be beyond devastation, beyond what you see, and affect the economies, affect a lot of different factors. So earthquakes, no joke. And now to see that level, that's a very large level move. I'm sure that's going to be something that you know, we're going to keep seeing that, because we're going to see one. The king arrives and there's the huge one, right? So that's the last big sign before his arrival. The signs he gave me, all of them came to pass already. So that's the last one we're waiting for, is the big one. But yeah, there was a massive, massive wave, treacherous waves that began to hit California. And so we're seeing some effect there. And again, are they tied to this earthquake? We don't know. Giant waves are forecast to pummel California's coastline, churned up by Pacific storms sweeping across the West Coast this week. Meteorologists are warning that tremendous wave of energy will lead to treacherous conditions at California beaches Thursday through the weekend. And so that forecast turned out to be correct. So they're definitely seeing some effect. And I guess some parts are actually going away. Like, did Ocean Beach actually survive it? Look at that. Ocean Beach Pier got swallowed up. So that's not good. Yeah, surf time. I'm not sure you'd want to surf, guys, in this, because that could be pretty treacherous. The way these waters seem to be churning. I don't know. There's some things going on there that may not be natural, if you know what I mean. So I don't know if I'd want to be out there. I think I'd pass on that one. Now, something else that we've been paying attention to, guys, which is equally an earthquake, but it's an economic earthquake. And this is something that we've talked about all year long. And we knew that this was coming. We saw it on its way, but now it's official that Iran and Russia have officially ditched the US dollar for trade. So Russia and Iran have finalized their agreement to trade in their local currencies instead of the US dollar. Each time this happens, guys, those dollars have to come home. So this is devastation to the system that exists today at a level that they've never had to deal with. They escaped this when they pegged the dollar to the Saudi Arabian oil. It is no longer pegged to oil. So it is in free fall, whether you know it or not. Moscow has been cozying up to Tehran, with Iran revealing in November it will provide Russia with Su-35 fighter jets, M128 attack helicopters, and Yak-130 pilot training craft. The global de-dollarization drive has been going on for years, with BRIC countries and the so-called pariah states trying to ditch the American dollar in favor of other currencies. So every country that's ever had a problem or is under some kind of sanction or has some kind of issues with these guys, well, guess where they're going? And that's where their strengths are. They're growing quite a crowd over there, as we told you they would. And as we told you, that's going to affect America. And it's not only affecting us economically, but we've got population numbers dropping for the first time, America's slowest population growth since the Great Depression. I think we can all speculate as to why, but nevertheless, here are the results. If the current U.S. growth rate pace continues through the decade, the 2020s will be the slowest growing decade in the nation's history. So those that wanted to slow the train down, if you will, the population train, well, it looks like they were in some ways successful because reproduction rates have plummeted in recent last few years. So I'll leave it to you to deduce how come that is and who might be responsible for some of those things, right? And I think we all have to be a lot more attentive to what we allow in our perimeter, in our proximity. We still live in a free world, and evil does exist. And, you know, even the best regulators and the best like government in the world will miss certain things. Okay. So if people are bent on putting poison into soaps or clothing or whatever because they have an agenda, well, it's up to you to be wise enough to learn what is safe and what is not. And we are learning the hard way, folks. We are learning the hard way that we are surrounded by those that don't actually care about our well-being. So that's reality. That's where we are. Last week we talked about the AI and it being mixed with military. You guys remember that? Okay, not literally one day after we talked about that, this story comes out about a Tesla robot. Did you guys hear about this? Tesla robot attacks an engineer. I gotta put this on the screen. At a company's Texas factory during a violent malfunction, leaving a trail of blood and forcing workers to hit the emergency shutdown. Data shows that one 21 gig Texas workers was injured on the job, and now an attorney aiding contract laborers on the factory tells Daily Mail that there's evidence that Tesla underreported accidents to state regulators. So they're not reporting when, of course not, because, you know, they don't want you to tell them they can't do it. They want to keep making different versions of iRobot. Remember that movie, iRobot? I don't know. They look an awful lot like they it reminds me of iRobot, guys. And you remember what happened in that one? The robots turned on the people. Okay. So who finds that a little bit creepy that we've got robots? And I got to tell you, this AI thing, it's embryonic, and it makes a lot of mistakes. It makes up a lot of stuff. It invents things that don't exist. It can't be trusted. And so we have to be very careful going forward because this technology is far from perfect. One of the things that I found very telling, and again, you guys know I don't like anything politics, right? I don't like to even talk about it. But this I found very interesting because it's the center of one of the cases against one of the candidates running for president in the United States. And we don't have to talk about the candidates, but this is really huge. Take a look at this, guys. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger refuses to testify under oath about the Dominion voting machines that were under his authority. So let me see if I got this right. You're prosecuting the guy because he doesn't think you guys did it right, and you won't go under oath to testify on these pieces of equipment that you are certifying? Does anybody else smell that? That doesn't smell good. Does that smell good to you? Doesn't smell good to me. So what is this indicating? This is indicating that a long, shady thing is getting a lot more light than they intended. And this was meant to just stay under the radar, but it is not staying under the radar. So part of what I see here is light shining in places that it wasn't expected. And massive levels of corruption are now being exposed. If you remember, there's a story out about the judge that now is releasing information about that certain island, right? Well, that's going to expose a lot of people that they don't want, that don't want exposure. So again, This is going to be a moment where we have to be very on our toes about different kinds of, distractions. And some of them may be not so nice distractions. One of the things that, again, reflection of the change in the global situation regarding the dollar is something that we mentioned several weeks ago, but I want to mention it again before we sign off tonight, because banks terminated 60,000 workers. That's telling you all something. That's a lot of people that are no longer working at the banks. Why do they need that many less employees? Why do they think that their future depended on getting rid of these people? There's something major changing very soon here, if not already upon us, that is going to be implemented, because usually when you see this kind of movement, okay, in any industry, it indicates that industry is about to collapse. Okay. That is a lot of workers from various banks that are large institutions that are no longer working. And the collapse of 3 U.S. regional banks, First Republic, Silicon Valley, and Signature Bank, marked some of the largest failures in the banking system since 2008. Central banks contained the mini crisis earlier this year with forced intervention. So they're doing some buying of dead assets. They're forcing it. And the mega merger of Credit Suisse with UBS, if you remember that, these are just buy time efforts, guys. These cannot stop this tsunami that is hitting the banking because of the changes with BRICS and everything else that's going on. The world is dramatically changing. This is going to affect you. And this is going to affect people. Some of it will be eventually good, I think, because it's going to force a new thing to come in, which will wipe out debt. But the bad thing is the transition is when people get hurt. There's always collateral damage in transitions. So this is why, as we see these things happening, be sensitive, be generous, be kind, be loving, sow with wisdom in this hour, so that in the day of trouble you can reap. So many people have forgotten that principle and will walk into the day of trouble and then realize they should have done something while it was worth something, because it's now worthless. It's sitting there, a pile, and it can do you no good. While it can, make friends with, what does he say? What does the scripture say? Make friends with the mammon of unrighteousness, right? So that when it fails, they will receive you in heavenly habitations. And this is a very important principle. He told me today that Cain cannot do that. So this is one of the other ways that we separate the harvest. Cain is incapable of doing that. Only Elohim's children even have the capability. He won't even receive it from Cain and from those of that spirit. So they simply are not able. And when he showed me that, I'm like, wow. And so they like to hang out with you guys, though. Just understand that, because they're hoping they get swept in. They're hoping that you become their ticket, if you will. Like they can roll in with your help. And speaking of rolling in, this I found to be astounding, because, again, as a veteran, as a grandfather and father, and a person that's watched people struggle for decades, especially in this area of health. There's so many people that do not have adequate coverage, who do not have, good health care available to them. And California has decided to become the first state. Watch this, guys. A state that is underwater economically. I don't know how they can even afford this, but look at this. This looks to me like the takeover of the healthcare system, but whatever. California becomes the first state to offer health insurance to all undocumented immigrants. About 700,000 adults between 26 and 49 will be eligible as of January 1. And by telling people that, how many know they're going to get a lot more? They're going to get a lot more. All right. And California will welcome the new year by becoming the first state to offer health insurance for all undocumented immigrants. Starting January 1st, all undocumented immigrants, regardless of age, will qualify for Med-Cal, which is basically like Medicare, okay, which covers like anything. It's actually some of the best coverage if you really need medical care, because they can bill the state for anything now, right? So all undocumented immigrants, regardless of age, will qualify for Medi-Cal, California's version of the federal Medicaid program for people with low incomes. Previously, undocumented immigrants were not qualified to receive comprehensive health insurance, but were allowed to receive emergency or pregnancy-related services because we're not animals, right? We're a civilized country. So yeah, if you hurt yourself in our country, you don't have to be a citizen for us to make sure your broken leg gets set, or if you happen to be having a baby, happen to be here, maybe, who knows, you could have been visiting. There's lots of reasons why that's okay. I'm all right with that. But to give them full coverage, I mean, talk about encouraging undocumented workers to come in, right? So you want to talk about a real decision that is really affecting, your fellow man around you. And again, not to be insensitive to the stranger, but there's something wrong when you take care of the stranger before you take care of your family. There's something wrong with that. Okay. The scripture says a man doesn't take care of his own household is worse than an infidel. How is that not true also of a nation? I don't understand how that's not true as well of a nation. Maybe somebody can enlighten me, because as far as I'm concerned, and I don't care what nation it is, it doesn't matter what it is. And be generous to the stranger, but take care of your own people first. Be generous to the neighbor, but make sure your own children get to eat. Make sure your own people are well and are cared for. So who's paying for this, right? All the people in California that are paying health insurance premiums that can't afford them, by the way. I mean, they're ridiculously expensive. Okay. Anybody who's paying health insurance premiums knows how much those cost. And now you're just saying, oh, by the way, that nearly bankrupt you the last 10 years, these payments you've been making, these guys are going to just get that for walking in. Are they trying to get everybody upset? It sure seems that way. Because that is in your face. It's pretty insulting. I feel bad for any Californian, anybody who went broke, maybe is still paying off. Maybe they lost a bunch of stuff because they couldn't pay a medical bill. And then they watch that. I don't know how that doesn't upset you. You know what I'm saying? So again, I mean, we're watching a degradation here. Yes. And it is like they're rubbing salt in the wounds. This is also part of what I believe is part of the plan, is to create so much irritation and frustration that people go at each other. But the people living that, they're not the problem. They didn't come up with this nonsense. The people in the various countries, all of you just want to live your lives. And that includes the ones in these war-torn areas. These people don't want to run off to war on either side. They want to just live. And there are those that think, well, no, we need to do this. We need to go through this. So we have to understand that that's the problem. The mentality that war is a good thing. The mentality that war solves anything. The mentality that doing these kinds of injustices are somehow equitable in some weird, retarded way. We need the grown-ups to show up again. Grown-ups need to run for city council. Grown-ups need to run for state legislature. Grown-ups need to start taking over these houses and these areas of authority, and stop allowing that to be taken over by those who come up with these kinds of plans. I mean, that's why it's happening. And so, this is a call to all of you, all America, all the nations. You have to be responsible for your own countries. You've got to be responsible for your county. You've got to start there. And we make the difference. We're the difference makers. So I encourage you all to not just sit on the sidelines. And yes, we pray. Yes, we cry out to Elohim, but there's also things that we can do to augment, to help, to intervene in some of these crises that we're going to see. And this mentality of sitting back with, as a spectator, watching calamity. Mom and I were talking just today. We saw a video where there was a crash, and everybody was just taking video of the crash. Nobody was helping the victims. I think it was a plane crash or something, and nobody was helping the victims. They were all just videotaping. What happened to us? What is that? Put the camera down. and go help the poor person. Videotape later. It's amazing what this spectatorism, this voyeurism that has sort of taken over is detrimental, and it's infected the work of the ministry to the point where people think their job is to just watch other people work. No, you're not involved. You need to get involved. And that means caring enough about your brother or your sister wherever they are. And if you're gathering folks, if you're a pastor or a leader and you're developing that, make sure the people that you've got coming around you are not Cain descendants. Just looking, they just got their name on the forehead is Jimmy, and they want to find out what you're going to give me. They're not there to be a part of. They're there to receive. All right, that's the wrong people. You can't build with those folks. You got to build with people that know how to pick up a brick, not somebody that needs to be told. And so understand that this sorting process is real. It's very dangerous. A lot of people are finding themselves coming together because they're economically concerned and then finding out that they're not with like-minded people at all. Or maybe they were more survivalists and then they find out again, not like-minded people at all. It's very important. It breaks everything down. Okay, you need to be with people that you are like-hearted, like Ruach together. Because if you're not, it won't matter. None of the other things will matter. That will be the end of it. So it is very important that you find those who you can cooperate with, work with, are of the same spirit, of the same heart, connect in and work together. And don't let anybody be in that group that is not contributing or part of that full on, because they're dangerous. Half in and half out gets people killed. Okay, especially in these types of situations. And we can be in a conflict at any moment. These guys can decide it's time for the year of the dragon or whatever, right? And the next thing you know, we're in conflict. You don't know. And so since we've been warned ahead of time that these things are things that we would see, we are not wise if we're not preparing for them. I mean, we were warned that these would come. So don't be troubled, be wise. Get in front of it. Get out in front of these things. Start thinking about that. And if you haven't got a plan, well, that's a good thing to start praying about right now, because many, many people have taken a voyeuristic spectator mentality, like, oh, Elohim's going to get me out of here. Yeah, he's going to send a guy with a weekly news update to wake you up. The 2 helicopters and a boat. All right. This is it. These are the things you're getting. This is him sending messengers to tell you, hey, you're in a dangerous spot. Start praying. The Ruach will lead you. And some of you are going to find that things were already prepared for you. Wonderful. Connect in. And if not, well, then maybe you're the leader that's going to establish something new. And let me give you this counsel. Don't just open it up to everybody. Make sure the people that you're connecting with are all in, because that's how you know the difference between those he is drawing and those that are just jumping on your boat. Okay? It's very dangerous time. So be wise out there. Remember, he said to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. Those of you that are part of this house, how do we know that? How do we know that? By your actions. That's how we know. It's the only way we know. Okay. And this is how we know. Everybody has to know those they labor amongst. If there's ever been a time that you needed to do that, now's the time. Now, wherever you are in the earth, some of you are watching me from very dangerous places. I don't even want to mention where you are because it's that dangerous. So I'm just encouraging you, find other like-minded, like-spirited people who are just as all in as you in whatever it is Elohim has got you doing, and make sure that everyone that is that involved. No exceptions. Half in and half out, no good. Just like the king, spit it out. That's who you learned it from. Okay? Make sure everyone you're working with, whatever you're doing, do it heartily as unto Elohim. Well, that's it for tonight, folks. I hope this update has been encouraging to you. I want to just continue to encourage you to be a blessing one to another. Remember, no matter what, we are always kind. We are always loving. and we always walk in his shalom. Thank you again for joining us. We'll be here again this time next week on Facebook, Rumble, and YouTube. It's always a pleasure to join you. Good night.